Hello, dear brothers and sisters. Today, we are going to embark on a fascinating journey through the life of King Solomon, a historical and spiritual figure of immense wisdom and mystery. Get ready to discover the surprising details of his life, from his birth to his ascension to the throne, his achievements, sins, and the teachings he left for us. Welcome to the Read and Praise channel. Before we begin, don't forget to give your like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with everyone who might be interested in this incredible and edifying story. Your support is crucial for us to continue bringing rich and inspiring content to you. The calling of Solomon. Solomon, the third king of Israel, began his reign during a period of great tensions and challenges. He was the son of King David and Bathsheba, but his ascension to the throne was not a simple or conflict-free transition. In fact, the process of his selection and the guarantee of his position as king involved dynastic disputes and a moment of political crisis in the kingdom of Israel. When David grew old and neared his death, the issue of succession to the throne became a critical point. King David had promised that Solomon, his son with Bathsheba, would be the next king of Israel. However, the political landscape was complex, and the successor to the throne was not decided solely by the king's will. There were various factions and interests at play, and many members of the royal family had aspirations to power. Adonijah, David's son with another wife, was the first to declare himself king. Taking advantage of David's frailty as he was old and debilitated, Adonijah made a bold move to seize the throne. He proclaimed himself king and began organizing a grand banquet with the principal officers of the army and influential figures of Israel, seeking support for his cause. This declaration of Adonijah as king was made without David's consent, which caused a crisis in the government. However, while Adonijah was trying to consolidate his power, there was a central figure who had not yet been consulted: Bathsheba, Solomon's mother. Bathsheba, aware of the promise made by David that her son Solomon would be the successor, could not allow Adonijah to take the throne without that promise being fulfilled. Determined to secure her son's future, she went to King David to remind him of his promise and asked him to take measures to ensure that Solomon was anointed king. Besides Bathsheba, the prophet Nathan also played a crucial role in Solomon's ascension to the throne. Nathan, who served as David's spiritual advisor, recognized that the political situation was becoming a risk for the kingdom and for the divine promise made to David and Bathsheba. He joined Bathsheba and went to King David, with the goal of ensuring that Solomon was recognized as the legitimate heir. Nathan and Bathsheba presented themselves together before David, and as a result of this coordinated action, David was reminded of his promise and God's will for Solomon to be the next king. The prophet Nathan not only reinforced the idea that Solomon should be the successor, but also helped to ensure that Adonijah's plan was thwarted. David then recognized the need to act immediately, as Adonijah's ascension without his consent would have caused a major conflict in the kingdom. Faced with this dynastic crisis, David took decisive action. He summoned the priest Zadok and the prophet Nathan, and before them ordered that Solomon be anointed king. Solomon was then placed on David's horse and taken to the city of Gihon, where he was anointed with oil, according to the anointing rituals of the king of Israel. This anointing was a public and solemn ceremony that ratified Solomon's reign and gave legitimacy to his ascension to the throne. The people of Israel gathered to celebrate Solomon's anointing, and the trumpets were sounded, announcing his coronation. The celebration was a demonstration of popular support and divine confirmation. When Adonijah and his followers heard the news of Solomon's anointing, they were alarmed and recognized that the kingdom was lost to them. Adonijah sought refuge at the altar in the temple, but the plot to take the throne was definitively thwarted. Solomon's ascension to the throne was therefore an act of fulfilling God's promise to David. God had promised David that his descendant would occupy the throne of Israel forever, and this was fulfilled through Solomon. When David was about to die, he gave Solomon instructions on how to govern with wisdom and justice, and reminded him of the importance of following God's commandments. Solomon received his father's legacy, not only as the new king, but also as a leader who was to maintain Israel's covenant with God. In a dream, God appeared to Solomon shortly after his ascension to the throne, offering him anything he desired. Solomon, in humility, asked for wisdom to govern the people of Israel justly and wisely, instead of asking for wealth or power. This request pleased God, who not only granted him unparalleled wisdom, but also riches and honors, making him the most prosperous and wise king of his generation. Solomon's wisdom would become one of the most prominent features of his reign and a legacy that endures to this day. Solomon's ascension to the throne was not just a political event, but also a significant spiritual moment. He was chosen not only by his father, David, but also by God, to fulfill a divine purpose. Thus, Solomon began his reign not only as a leader of Israel, but as an instrument of divine will, destined to govern with wisdom, build the temple, and bring prosperity to his people. After being anointed king and assuming the throne of Israel, Solomon faced a great responsibility. He would govern a prosperous yet complex nation, full of internal and external challenges. The kingdom of Israel was in a transition period, with a solid foundation built by his father David, but still many obstacles to overcome. Solomon, therefore, needed divine guidance to lead the people with wisdom, integrity, and justice. This decisive moment in Solomon's life happened at Gibeon, an important location in Israel's history, where the king sought guidance from God. During the night, while he was sleeping, God appeared to Solomon in a dream and made him an extraordinary offer. The Lord said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." 1 Kings 3:5. This was a unique opportunity, a divine moment where Solomon could ask for anything: wealth, power, longevity, or victory over his enemies, as many kings might have desired. However, Solomon's response revealed his character and the depth of his faith. Instead of asking for something material or selfish, Solomon asked for wisdom. He said to God, "So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours?" 1 Kings 3:9. Solomon, aware of his young age and the immense responsibility awaiting him, asked for wisdom to govern Israel with discernment and justice. This request not only demonstrated humility, but also a profound understanding of his role as a leader. He recognized that he needed God's guidance to lead the people justly and faithfully. God was deeply impressed with Solomon's humility and sincerity. The Lord responded generously and abundantly. He said, "Since you have asked for this, and not for long life or wealth for yourself, nor have asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be." 1 Kings 3:11-12. God granted Solomon unparalleled wisdom, something that no one else would ever match in his time, neither before nor after him. However, divine generosity did not stop there. God also gave Solomon wealth, honor, and unmatched prosperity, making him the wisest and most prosperous man of his time. Additionally, God promised that if Solomon followed his ways, he would also have a long life. This episode at Gibeon became a milestone in Solomon's life, and is an example of how God values not selfish desires, but the pursuit of wisdom, justice, and humility in a leader. Solomon's request became a model for those seeking to be guided by divine wisdom, especially in moments of great responsibility. His choice to ask for wisdom instead of power or wealth, reflects the principle that the true value of a leader lies in the ability to discern between right and wrong, to do justice, and to govern with integrity. Solomon's wisdom soon manifested notably in various situations, but one of the most famous and revealing episodes occurred early in his reign. The Bible recounts an extraordinary judgment between two women who claimed to be the mother of a baby. Both had recently given birth, but one of the babies died, and the two women presented conflicting claims to the king about which of them was the mother of the surviving baby. They were in dispute, with no clear evidence to resolve the issue. In his divine wisdom, Solomon asked for the baby to be brought to him. With the intent to reveal the true mother, he suggested something surprising. He ordered the baby to be cut in half, giving half to each woman. This shocking idea had an immediate effect. The true mother, driven by maternal instinct, pleaded for the child to be given to the other woman to save his life. This reaction revealed the identity of the true mother, and Solomon's judgment was resolved justly and accurately. This episode not only demonstrated Solomon's unique wisdom, but also made his name known throughout the kingdom and beyond as a just and perceptive judge. The judgment of the two women became a famous story and was one of many situations where Solomon's wisdom was tested and proven unparalleled. People came from all over to hear the king and seek his guidance, and his fame as the wisest man on earth spread throughout the region. Solomon's wisdom also reflected in his political decisions, in building alliances, governing Israel, and administering justice. He wrote proverbs, songs, and teachings that continued to impact generations. His wisdom was practical and profound, applied not only in legal matters, but also in the management of the kingdom, relationships, and the laws that governed the people of Israel. The wisdom granted to Solomon became one of the most enduring legacies of his reign. His proverbs, such as those found in the book of Proverbs in the Bible, contain life lessons that are still applied today. He is also the author of the book of Ecclesiastes, which offers deep reflections on life, the futility of pursuing material goods, and the importance of fearing God. His wisdom became not only a tool for governance, but also a model of wise and just living for leaders and the people of Israel. Solomon's request for wisdom and God's response reflect the nature of a leader who desires not only earthly success, but also leadership that honors God and serves the common good. Solomon's wisdom not only made him the most powerful and respected king of his time, but also transformed him into a perennial example of how true wisdom, coming from God, can guide a life of justice and prosperity. The construction of Solomon's Temple. One of Solomon's greatest and most significant achievements, and a milestone in the history of Israel, was the construction of the Temple in Jerusalem, often referred to as Solomon's Temple. This temple was not just a grand building. It represented God's presence among his people and the fulfillment of a promise made by his father David that God would have a permanent house in Jerusalem. The construction of the temple was a monumental task that reflected Israel's devotion to God, their pursuit of holiness, and their desire to establish a centralized place for worship, prayer, and sacrifices. The idea of building a temple for God was conceived by David, but because he had been a man of war and bloodshed, God decided that it would be Solomon, his son, who would carry out this project. In 1 Chronicles 28:2-3, David reveals that God had told him, "You shall not build a house for my name, because you have been a warrior and have shed blood." The construction of the temple was then entrusted to Solomon, who took on the task with a clear vision of building a place that reflected God's grandeur and holiness. When Solomon became king, he set out to establish the foundations of his work. He sought wisdom and guidance from God for the execution of the project and planned every detail of the temple's construction. The plan itself was inspired by God, with specific measurements and characteristics outlined to reflect God's most holy nature. Solomon's temple was designed to be a grand and splendid edifice, with a structure that included the Holy of Holies, the most sacred place where the Ark of the Covenant would be kept, along with the courtyard where the people would gather to worship. The construction of the temple was not a simple or isolated task. Recognizing the magnitude of the work, Solomon sought help from King Hiram of Tyre, the ruler of a Phoenician city-state famous for its building skills and material resources. King Hiram, an ally of David and now Solomon, provided the cedar wood and other precious materials necessary for the temple's construction. The cedar forests of Tyre were renowned for their quality and durability, essential for constructing such an imposing building. In exchange, Solomon sent grains and other produce from the land to Tyre, establishing an economic and diplomatic alliance between the two kingdoms. Hiram not only provided materials, but also sent skilled artisans, including master carpenters and metalworkers, to work on the temple. The collaboration between Solomon and Hiram demonstrated how the construction of the temple was a work of great importance, involving a network of trade, resources and talents that extended Israel's borders. The construction of the temple was a long and detailed process, lasting 7 years, a significant period considering the complexity of the work. The temple was erected on Mount Moriah, the same location where Abraham was willing to sacrifice his son Isaac as commanded by God. The building was designed with precision, according to divinely inspired plans, and featured stunning architecture and luxurious ornamentation. Solomon's temple was primarily built with precious materials, cedar wood, gold, silver, and precious stones such as jasper and onyx. The walls, the altar, and other elements of the temple were covered with gold, giving it a radiance that symbolized God's greatness and holiness. The interior of the temple was meticulously decorated with figures of cherubim, palm trees, and flowers, all symbolizing the purity, majesty, and sanctity of God's presence. In the Holy of Holies, the most sacred part of the temple, were placed 2 large cherubim made of olive wood, covered with gold, whose wings extended to touch the walls of the temple. Additionally, the temple was equipped with gold utensils, such as the altar of incense, the table of the showbread, and the candlesticks, known as menorahs, which were symbols of the divine light that illuminated the temple and the lives of the people of Israel. The space also featured enormous bronze basins and lavers for the purification rituals that were part of worship. Solomon's temple was much more than an architectural marvel or an imposing structure. It was the spiritual center of Israel, the place where the Israelites would gather to worship God, offer sacrifices, and seek forgiveness for their sins. God's presence, manifested through the Ark of the Covenant, was represented there in the Holy of Holies. The temple was not just a building, but the visible manifestation of the covenant between God and the people of Israel. It represented the centrality of God in the lives of the people and the need for a sacred place to cultivate faith, purity, and devotion. The construction of the temple also symbolized the peace and prosperity of Solomon's reign, as it was erected during a period of political and economic stability in Israel. Solomon took advantage of the time of peace to focus on building a lasting temple that would represent the commitment of the people of Israel to worship and holiness. The presence of the temple in Jerusalem signified that God was with his people, guiding them, blessing them, and receiving their worship. When the temple was finally completed, Solomon organized a grand dedication ceremony attended by thousands of Israelites. During this ceremony, Solomon offered a moving prayer, asking God that the temple be the place where people could seek his presence and mercy. He also asked that when the people turned to God in prayer, they would be heard, and that through the temple, God's name would be exalted among all nations. God responded to Solomon's prayer in an impressive manner. The Bible recounts that during the dedication, a dense cloud, symbolizing God's presence, filled the temple to the extent that the priests could not minister due to the intensity of the divine glory. This was a clear sign that God accepted the temple as his permanent dwelling place among his people. The construction of Solomon's temple was not only a material accomplishment, but also a spiritual one. The temple became an eternal symbol of Israel's desire to draw near to God, to be sanctified, and to maintain the covenant with the Lord. Its construction was a testament to God's power to guide his people, Solomon's wisdom, and Israel's dedication to their faith. Solomon, the son of David, was recognized in his time and throughout history as one of Israel's wisest and most prosperous rulers. His wisdom, granted by God after his request at Gibeon, not only distinguished him as a leader, but also played a fundamental role in his ability to administer the kingdom of Israel, maintaining a stable and prosperous government. Solomon was not only a wise ruler, but also a great strategist and diplomat, whose vision for the country led Israel into an era of peace, prosperity, and significant influence. Under Solomon's reign, the kingdom of Israel reached the pinnacle of its wealth and power, with peace established during his reign. After decades of conflicts under David, Solomon was able to focus on consolidating alliances and expanding trade, which brought prosperity to Israel. Neighboring nations, including Egypt, Tyre, and other Phoenician cities, recognized Solomon's strength and wisdom and sought diplomatic relations with him. One of the most significant alliances was with Egypt, where Solomon married the pharaoh's daughter, further strengthening Israel's position on the international stage. This alliance not only sealed bonds of friendship and peace, but also facilitated trade and resource exchange, with Egypt supplying products like grains and other goods. Additionally, the relationship with Tyre, a prosperous commercial center, was essential for the trade of wood and other precious materials used in the temple's construction. Solomon also maintained robust trade relations with other distant kingdoms and tribes, such as Arabia, India, and regions of Africa, through caravans and ships. The trade of spices, gold, silver, precious stones, and fine fabrics was essential for increasing Israel's wealth, and Jerusalem became a prosperous center of international trade. Solomon's reputation as a just and prosperous ruler spread throughout the ancient world, and he was seen as a model of leadership, balance, and wisdom. Solomon's wisdom was not limited to governance. He was a prolific writer and is traditionally credited as the author of several books of the Bible, including Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon. These writings reflect his deep understanding of life, morality, justice, and spirituality. The Book of Proverbs is a collection of maxims and teachings on practical wisdom, offering advice on how to live a just, prudent, and discerning life. In contrast, Ecclesiastes presents a more philosophical view of the meaning of life and the futility of human pursuits without God, reflecting Solomon's experience of perceiving the limitations of wealth, pleasure, and human knowledge. The Song of Solomon, on the other hand, is a poetic work about love, celebrating the beauty and sanctity of conjugal love and the relationship between God and his people. These books continue to be sources of inspiration and reflection, offering timeless teachings that guide people on how to live with wisdom, justice, and balance. Solomon shared his wisdom not only through his words, but also through his example of life, showing that true wisdom comes from humility before God. One of the most famous stories about Solomon's wisdom is the visit of the Queen of Sheba, a monarch from a distant land traditionally identified with the region of present-day Ethiopia or Yemen. The queen had heard of Solomon's fame, especially his wisdom, wealth and prosperity, and decided to visit him to test his abilities with difficult questions. The queen's visit was a grand event. She brought precious gifts such as spices, gold, and gemstones to demonstrate her respect and admiration for Solomon. She posed challenging questions, testing the depth of his wisdom on a range of complex issues involving governance, science, philosophy, and religion. Solomon answered all the questions with great skill, which deeply impressed the queen. The Queen of Sheba, upon seeing Solomon's wisdom and the organization of his kingdom, was amazed by the prosperity and order of Israel's government. She recognized that Solomon's wisdom was a gift from God and that the Lord had specially blessed Israel. She praised God for giving Solomon wisdom to govern so wisely and gave a great gift to Solomon in recognition of his greatness. In 1 Kings 10:9, the Queen of Sheba says, "Praise be to the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and placed you on the throne of Israel. Because of the Lord's eternal love for Israel, he has made you king to maintain justice and righteousness." This episode not only reinforced Solomon's fame as a wise ruler, but also demonstrated how wisdom can have a profound impact not only on the internal affairs of a kingdom, but also on international relations. The legacy of Solomon's wisdom. Solomon's legacy as the wisest man of his generation has endured, and his name is synonymous with discernment and deep understanding. His ability to govern with wisdom and justice transformed Israel into a strong, prosperous nation, respected by all its neighbors. The works he left behind, including his writings, are still revered today by both Jews and Christians as sources of divine wisdom. Furthermore, Solomon's wisdom was not limited to governmental and religious matters. He was also admired for his practical abilities in daily life, such as resource management, organizing his court, and planning large infrastructure projects. Solomon was a visionary leader who combined divine wisdom with pragmatic management, making him a model of leadership for all times. In sum, Solomon was not only a great sage, but also a shrewd ruler who used his wisdom to create a prosperous and respected kingdom. His reign was an era of peace, stability, and great prosperity for Israel, and his wisdom continues to inspire and guide leaders and people worldwide today. Solomon, the wisest king who ever lived, ruled Israel for 40 years, leaving a deeply impactful legacy, both positive and negative. His reign is widely remembered for its great prosperity, incomparable wisdom, and the grand achievements he brought to his people. The Temple of Jerusalem, a monumental work he built to be the center of worship for Israel, is still considered one of the greatest accomplishments in biblical history. Under his leadership, Israel reached the peak of its wealth and influence, with diplomatic and commercial alliances with neighboring powers such as Egypt and Tyre. However, despite these impressive achievements, Solomon's legacy also carries a vital warning about the dangers of idolatry and disobedience to God. His spiritual decline began when he allowed his foreign wives, whom he married for political reasons, to influence him to worship pagan gods. From that point, his wisdom began to be corrupted, and by disobeying God's instructions, he planted the seeds for the division of the kingdom of Israel after his death. His son Rehoboam would inherit a fragmented kingdom, with the northern kingdom breaking away and turning away from true worship of God. Solomon's reign, therefore, serves as a profound lesson on the challenges of leadership. Throughout his life, he demonstrated that even the wisest and most blessed by God are not immune to temptations and the risk of straying from the path of justice and obedience to God. The fact that he began his reign with a request for wisdom and, through it, achieved so many victories shows how a pure heart and the pursuit of discernment are essential for good governance. However, when he succumbed to external pressures and turned away from God, the consequences were devastating both for his personal life and for the future of Israel. However, Solomon's legacy also serves as an inspiration. His writings, such as the Book of Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon, continue to be inexhaustible sources of spiritual wisdom and moral guidance to this day. They teach us about the fear of God, the importance of wisdom and humility, and the transience of earthly life, reminding us that what truly matters is our relationship with God, not worldly riches or achievements. Ultimately, Solomon's legacy is both an example of great wisdom and wealth, as well as a warning about the dangers of losing connection with God. His life story teaches us that, regardless of our abilities, achievements, or status, we must always be mindful of our faith and obedience to God so that we do not fall into the same mistakes he made. If you enjoyed this reflection on Solomon's legacy, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your opinion in the comments below. What do you think about Solomon's wisdom and the challenges he faced as a leader? I would love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss new videos like this one. Until next time.